For his maiden presentation to the National Assembly, I call on the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Hugh Todd, to make his contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd firstly like to join my honorable colleagues in congratulating you on your new post, and I do wish you good health and God's blessing. Mr. Speaker, before going to the substance of my discussion, I would like to firstly put things into context. Mr. Speaker, I want you to understand that we're not dealing with our equals on the other side. We're dealing with people who don't share the same values that we on this side feel and view, nor the people of this country. They have been well fed by the state for 5 years. Now they're in hibernation. They will be resting there and trying to create trouble in Guyana, and they will be unproductive in their efforts in trying to move this country forward. So I want to make it clear that that is our point of departure. We are not dealing with people who believe in democracy, good governance, respect for the rule of law and human rights. We are dealing with people who are very, very destructive to Guyana. We have been doing all of the heavy lifting. Post-independence into the era of globalization, and we're still doing the heavy lifting. It is sad, Mr. Speaker, that we have to endure these types of hardship in 21st century Guyana. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the challenges that we face from the other side, based on their unproductive efforts and the fact they're trying to make things hard and difficult and frustrating for us, we have a mandate to represent the people, and we will do that without fear or favor, to the best of our ability, to serve the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the reason why this noble House is so configured, that is so because democracy was restored in August 2nd, and that is why we are on this side of the House, and that is why the APNO AFC are on that side of the House, because democracy was restored August 2nd in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, what is the record from the other side? They have no record to show. A broken record, a record without any substance. I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that they have only had 60% of their time in office as a legitimate government. The other 40%, they spent hanging on to power, disobeying the rule of law, and trying to subvert the will of the people. So, Mr. Speaker, we have to understand what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with like-minded people. We are not dealing with people who we can work with. But we will have to guide them and ensure that we can win their supporters, because come 2025, that House will have very few seats. We will take Georgetown. We will take Linden. We will take Nebacalis. We will take Golden Grove. We will take number 5 as well, Mr. Speaker. That is our mandate, because we are representatives. They are state oil salesmen and women, gangsters in suits, fraudsters. They have no place in this history of this beautiful country. So, Mr. Speaker, let me go through their rap sheet. From the time they took office in 2015, they began to militarize the state, trying their best to intimidate the good citizens of this country, to drive fear in each and every one of us. But because we had a responsible opposition that understands the nature of that party or the coalition, we were able to represent the people, and that is why we can stand here today speaking from this side of the House in full support of the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, From the time the coalition took office, they went about trying to capture the state. The unilateral appointment of James Patterson was an attempt to control GCOM, and we saw what ensued following the collapse of the government, the then government. The lack of transparency, $18 million signing bonus was hidden from us, the people of Guyana. That is fine. I can deal with Pampy and Lampy. Lack of accountability. Billions of dollars unaccounted for. Check the Auditor General report. Billions of dollars unaccounted for. That is the nature of that side of the house. Big government, Mr. Speaker. The largest cabinet in this hemisphere under that government. A government that is pregnant with nepotism and cronyism. Jobs for their friends and their families. Occupying offices without any tasks, without any contract. Just occupying space and being paid. It was a sad affair, Mr. President. And that is why I'm trying to remind the House and the people of this country that we're not dealing with our equals. We're not dealing with people who believe in development, who believe in democracy, not as a word that you put on a wall, but in your actions. So, Mr. Speaker, as I continue, look at their actions. Extractive political and economic policies. Look what it did to the sugar belt. Putting ordinary Guyanese citizens on the breadline. Unconscionable. Is that the way you treat the working class? But thankfully on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we have a political party in government that is pro-working class, who believes in development from the top up and the bottom down, so that we can have balanced development. Mr. Speaker, all of what the coalition did in 5 years created structural violence. They dismantled our institutions. The disparity became even worse between the have and the have-nots. That led to social ills, Mr. President. Broken homes, suicide rate went up. It is because of that side of the House. They're the ones who destroy this country, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we have been given a mandate to restore this country back to its beauty and to its vigor and the life that we enjoyed for 23 years, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is sad to say that during the time in office of the coalition government, the people of this country were reduced to mere serfs. They took our rights and our liberties away from us. They took us back to 16th century England. That is the nature of that coalition government. It is a shell that believes in political opportunism, that do not understand how to serve people. They believe that they are masters, and they believe that they should decide on every action for the people of this country. So they remove the people from participation. We are the ones on this side that provided responsible leadership in and out of office. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we have been given a mandate to restore this country back to its rightful place. And that is why we are thankful to the people of Guyana that they've recognized that the APNU AFC is no longer deserving of being in office. Mr. Speaker, consider the vision of our coalition on the other side. You follow the drift. You're listening. Mr. Speaker, think about it. The opposition leader in the House at one time exclaimed that one of the best projects undertaken and delivered to the people of the Guyana was Durban Park. He was excited about that. Now compare that with the Marriott Hotel. Value added, creation of jobs, revenue earning, value added. You ask any ordinary citizen in this country who is desirous of a job, an opportunity to look after their wives and their husbands and their families, if they will want another Marriott or another Dublin Park. Go and ask them. Go and ask them. We are about progress. And that is a small comparison because I'm using two infrastructure projects. One that earns money for the people of this country, and one that is basically a Woodstock. That is the nature. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying to you that using that simple example, we can see the difference in the vision between this side of the House and that side of the House. They have not produced any infrastructure undertaking in their time in office. Everything that they've done was a rollover from our government. Every project, every major project was a rollover, already hashed out and financed. And what they did, they squandered the resources. Look at the airport. Look at the airport, Mr. Speaker. Look what they did to it. They are no good, and this is their record. So sitting on that side of the House and trying to play equal, it's not going to help you. Mr. Speaker, the first 3 years of the coalition government was the hardship period. Hardship period. Taxes. The taxes, Mr. President, meted out on the people, ordinary people of this country. When we get to the second period.
Honorable Member, I'm very honored that you are calling me Mr. President, but I think we're in the National Assembly.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the second phase of the opposition in office, I call that the dark period, the remaining 40%. This is a period, Mr. Speaker, that was the darkest days in the history of this country. The violation of the Constitution, disrespect for the rule of law, the violation of the rights of individuals, race politics, disrespect in regard for intergovernmental bodies, treaties, and charters, Mr. Speaker. Those are the outcomes from our honorable brothers and sisters on that side of the House. What they've done in the last 2 years in government was to dismantle our political, economic, and social structures, bringing mayhem to bear on this country. Mr. Speaker, the APNO AFC is characterized by ineffective national policies and strategies, culminating in failed national objectives. Point in case, the Green State Development Strategy, a shell. Mr. Speaker, this led to very weak foreign policy instruments, poor and ineffective international engagements, and a withering of our international presence, and thereby no legacy to show. If you contrast that, Mr. Speaker, with our developmental strategies, we have already had 3 massive strategies that were workable and that helped to move this country forward. The low carbon development strategy, the national development strategy, and the national competitiveness strategy all together helped to move this country forward between 2006 onwards. Mr. Speaker, we are here to present an emergency budget. This is so because the APNO FC stole most of the year from us. And because we're competent And because we understand the needs of the people, we were able to hash out an emergency budget in less than 4 weeks. Mr. Speaker, our budget is $1.7 billion. And we have some key priority areas that we're working on. And Mr. Speaker, let me remind the House that the Foreign Ministry lacked presence, lacked efficiency, lacked effectiveness, lacked competency, and lacked suitability in many of the areas, especially in our foreign missions. So, Mr. Speaker, our job as a new government, not new to governance, I might add, will restore the vigor in the ministry and put the ministry back on the regional and world map. Priority areas, Mr. Speaker. We will focus on Guyana's sovereignty and territorial integrity. If you recall, Mr. Speaker, under the Granger-led administration, they have weakened the structures to the point that our sovereignty was fragile. We were exposed territorially because we lacked capacity to negotiate and win and maintain friendships and partnerships within the region and beyond. So, Mr. Speaker, we are in a position now that democracy is restored to use the resources available to us to ensure that we put sovereignty and our territorial integrity back in its rightful place so that we can ensure that we keep this country preserved, not for ourselves only, but for those to come in the future. Mr. Speaker, another priority area is strengthening our multilateral diplomacy. That was lacking, Mr. Speaker, for nearly 3.5 years under the APNO-FC coalition government. All they did was trips around the world for fun, photo ops on private jets. Mr. Speaker, coming back to Guyana with nothing to say but attendance. Attendance does not help the people of Guyana. You have to come back with workable solutions that will help to improve our national policies and national development. Mr. Speaker, the Group 77 and China is a priority, even though we have limited time available because our chairmanship comes to an end at the end of the year. Nonetheless, we have a menu of measures that we'll be presenting to the National Assembly to ensure that we're able to leave our presence in the international arena. Mr. Speaker, we'll be focusing on biodiversity and climate change, as well as relief measures following the COVID-19 pandemic. Following on from that, Mr. Speaker, the other area that we'll address for the end between October and December is to rebuild and enhance Guyana's bilateral, regional, hemispheric, and international engagements. Mr. Speaker, it has been broken. Most of our foreign partners and friends would have removed themselves from the government at that time because of the political crisis. Many felt that they were illegitimate, and as such, most of the diplomatic engagements and international cooperation would have been put on hold. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to tell you that the line is long. The days are long because the international community is queuing up to re-engage with Guyana because they see Guyana as a viable partner in our development of the region and the hemisphere as a whole. Mr. Speaker, we are also going to embark on aggressive policies and strategies to revitalize and deepen our diaspora engagement. Recall, Mr. Speaker, that under the APNO-AFC government, they moved the Diaspora Engagement Unit to citizenship under Minister Felix to politicize the diaspora engagement, Mr. Speaker. What they did was a travesty to the Guyanese people. So we could not benefit from the intellectual and financial and human resources out there in the diaspora because they politicized it for their own selfish gains. Mr. Speaker, we are going to normalize it. It is back with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, and we are going to ensure that we engage with our donor agencies and our partners overseas to ensure that diaspora engagement is a key pillar in our development. Mr. Speaker, let me remind the House that we have 5 years of engagement in this House. We have a track record that has been proven to be successful. Our budgets are effective, they are realistic, and they apply to each and every sector and strata within society. We are preparing for massive growth and development, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would also add that I would urge my honorable brothers and sisters on the other side to read our manifesto, engage yourselves, so that when you come to this house, you can have objective, critical thinking and analysis, so that together we can help move Guyana forward. If you remain in ignorance, if you remain in that state of mind, and if you still do not embrace democracy, it will be difficult for us to lift this country. We cannot allow ourselves to be caught up in the selfish attitude and behavior that ensued under the APNO FC. We have always stood firm by the people. We have always ensured that the resources are equitably distributed. We have always ensured that our budget is healthy and friendly. We believe in small government. We believe in ensuring the private sector is given the opportunity to make the gains necessary to move an economy forward. And Mr. Speaker, on the private sector, may I clarify for the people of this country that in this current dispensation, regionally and globally, the private sector is the engine of growth. I have to remind the honorable members on the other side that we have signed on to the Washington Consensus. We are the ones who signed on to accepting market principles and values and democracy tied together. We are the ones who believe that foreign direct investment is good for your people and your country. We believe in pragmatic policies. We know that we can empower the private sector, we can have a small and lean government, and we can have a budget that will still work for the people. Unlike the other side, Mr. Speaker, they do not believe in the private sector. The former Minister of Finance labeled the private sector as drug dealers, as criminals. That is insulting. It is shameful for you guys to say that, knowing that we have to depend on the private sector to advance our bilateral engagements and our regional engagements, because those are the ones who have to go there and provide jobs, create and innovate. Not you. You on the other side believe that you are all wise and all knowing. You're not. We are mere representatives. We are there to craft policies so that we can ensure that the people can benefit through our good governance and good measures that we provide for our people. So I beg of you, honorable members on the other side, to follow good leadership on this side. Get your acts together. Understand that if you want to make Guyana a better place, that you will have to shed those old thinkings that you have, and understand that you have to embrace policies that are progressive. You have to embrace policies that are designed to ensure that people's lives are better, so that at the end of the day, people must be able to say that I am better off today than I was yesterday because of the policies and programs of the government. So I give you this charge, honorable members on the other side, that if you want to work with us to move this country forward, ensure that you understand what democracy is. Ensure you understand what free market principles are. Ensure you understand what social policies should be implemented to help our citizens. Because on this side, we have made massive achievements in healthcare and in education. And that was done through our strong, soft diplomacy in being able to build friends and partners for the benefit, mutual benefit for both. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to say that this budget, even though it's an emergency budget, mirrors what we have produced over the several decades that we've been in office. Because we understand the people, we understand their needs, we know how to deliver. Okay. We know, Mr. Speaker, we know how to deliver on policies and programs, and our track record is proven. If I go back to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that we have already sat and came up with a long-term strategy. We have a strategy for the next 5 years that aligns itself with our manifesto. So when it comes to the fact that we have not only foreign relations but international cooperation added, that is to show the direction that we're going. We're going in the direction where we expect, through our policies and programs, that we'll have massive growth and development in this country. And might I add, Mr. Speaker, we will have, I report to the President, so I must say, Mr. Speaker, that when you look at our policies and programs coming out of the ministry, it is aligned with it's aligned with our manifesto. Because if you look at our manifesto, honorable members on the other side, diversification and innovation will lead the movement of this country in the right direction. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you, and I want to assure the honorable members on the other side, that we at the Foreign Ministry will be ensuring that we have the right policy instruments to ensure that we engage with our traditional partners, our regional partners, and our extra-regional partners to ensure that the people of Guyana benefit at every level within the international forum. Multilateralism is important for us because at the G77 and China, it is a good opportunity for us, Mr. Speaker, to show who we are as Guyanese, to explain to the world what we see as important for small states. And I want the honorable members on the other side to understand that we understand our vulnerabilities, we understand our shortcomings, and we know how to position Guyana in the international environment using the resources that we have available to us because we are prudent, we are frugal, and we understand government and governance. So, Mr. Speaker, please accept my presentation, and I beg of my honorable members on the other side to cooperate with us, not to create mischief and not to be destructive, but work together in harmony so that we can move Guyana forward as a united nation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. I now call on the Honorable Dawn Hastings Williams to make her contribution.
It's on? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I stand to offer my perspective on the so-called emergency budget, it would be remiss of me not to join my colleagues in congratulating you for being appointed as the Speaker of this House. I wish you well and good health as you preside over the proceedings of this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Foreign Affairs seems not to be only the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but he appears to be foreign to almost everything. He appears to be foreign to reality. He appears to be foreign to what is happening in Guyana. And he appears to be foreign to Parliament. Mr. Speaker, but I understand because it's his maiden speech, so I'll go easy with it. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe that a responsible government that claims to be the government for all the people of Guyana must present facts to the nation and should not mislead this honorable House with fallacy. And I say that because as sitting here listening to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I began to feel that it was prior to 2015 that he was talking about. Incompetence. Mr. Speaker, if my recollections are correct, I heard the Honorable Minister of Natural Resources stating yesterday that there was no local content policy for the oil and gas sector and they are now working on it. But Mr. Speaker, I can recall that a local content policy for the oil and gas sector was completed and launched in January of this year. A quick search on Google will confirm the statement uttered by the Honorable Minister is untrue. Why tell the untruth when it can be easily disputed and proven incorrect? Mr. Speaker, if one had taken time to carefully examine the APNUAFC manifesto and the past budget presentations, one would have clearly seen that the documents provided a clear path for inclusive, green, economic, and social growth. A clear path to good life which focused on 4 pillars, namely, the digital state, the petroleum state, the green state, and the educated state. And for your information, Mr. Hamilton, I am standing here representing approximately 7,000 Guyanese. And if you're going to multiply 7,000 by 31, you might very well end up at 217,000 Guyanese. As was claimed, because my friends over there, they're not too certain if they are over on that side illegal or legal. But time will tell, Mr. Speaker. If you notice and recognize, yes, a lot of short-term governance has taken place in Guyana. Mr. Donald Ramatal was the president for 3 years. You can say APNUFCS has been here for 5 years. Mr. Ali might very well be here for a short term too. Mr. Speaker, we in the APNUAFC led by Mr. David Arthur Granger was always planning ahead, not only for 5 years, Mr. Speaker, but we had a decade of development plan. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, we were temporarily halted on the 2nd of August. Temporarily halted. As a result of fraudulent election process and results. And Mr. Speaker, I say fraud is fraud, according to my friend, the Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Anil Nandala.
Honorable member, I think you are now venturing into an area of on parliamentary language. The issue of fraudulent elections has been
Thank you, Mr.
highly
Speaker.
important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be so guided. I must at this time, Mr. Speaker, say to the people of Guyana that we on this side of the House will not tolerate or uphold anything that will bring division and disunity amongst our people. I say this, Mr. Speaker. We, the coalition family, believe in social cohesion. And Mr. Speaker, I'll continue. And when anything happens to divide us as a people, we will not associate ourselves with such activities. Hence, Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC stands firm and resolute against any form of discrimination or reckless governance, as you might say. We have already begun to experience the beginning of the dark days. In less than 40 plus days under this new administration. You're right to say, human safety. Mr. Speaker, human safety is again a growing concern. Territorial integrity is once again a growing concern. Job security is once again a growing concern. We must take very seriously the safety of our populace, especially the lives of our youth. Not because the other lives are not important, because all lives do matter. The lives of our people must be protected regardless of their creed, race, color, religion, or political persuasion. Mr. Speaker, our beautiful country has been plunged into a sad, sad situation by the gruesome killing of the two Henry boys, Orlando Jonas and Harry Singh. I lament with the families and friends of the three young men. They're gone too soon. Maybe I should say, whose lives were taken too soon by the evil one. May their souls rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, this will remain in the minds of our young people for a very, very long time. Already, many are asking, will there be justice for these boys? Will there be justice for these boys? Mr. Speaker, we also take very seriously our border security. Kaikan is a frontier village, and so are Arau, Parima, Etrimbang in the Cayuni-Mazaruni region, and so is Whitewater and Baramita in the Barima-Waini region, and the town of Letem in the Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo region. Mr. Speaker, these frontier villages deserve frontline treatment, and they are not solitary outposts. These communities are integral to their national defense. They safeguard public health. Communicable diseases know no borders, and already we are experiencing a growth in the numbers affected by COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, the death toll continues to rise. Where are the measures put in place in the so-called emergency budget to counter the infiltration of this dreaded disease through our porous borders? How many joint services men have been deployed to these communities? Mr. Speaker, or are they being misused to shoot pellets at peaceful protesters who are protesting for the human rights? I am sure any right-thinking Guyanese would have been appalled by the number of policemen who were deployed to my colleague member, Mr. Christopher Jones's home. Was there a pandemic in Tocqueville? Whatever the reason was, Mr. Speaker, there was no need to deploy 30-plus policemen to that location. I beg the members on the government side to get your acts together. Protect your people and do not drive fear into them. Mr. Speaker, PPP small c, which may be spelled out as pressuring poor people continuously. Now, they are in the driving seat. Now is your opportunity to prove your worth as an inclusive government, as you claim to be, for all the people of Guyana. And not only to your supporters. Take pattern from the APNU-AFC. Mr. Speaker, listening to the speakers talking about measures and projects which are catered for in this budget, some of them made I chuckle. I say chuckle because I am happy to hear that most of the projects initiated under the APNU-AFC government, for example, in the water sector and other headings, will be continued, and therefore, I am happy about that, but you cannot claim, the present administration cannot claim them as their projects. For those were some of our projections in the decade of our development plan. Mr. Speaker, let me now come to the budget presentation. It was in the right place under the desk. Mr. Speaker, as I began perusing the Budget 2020 speech presented by the Minister of Public Works and not by the Minister of Finance as customary, it still boggles my mind as to why this is happening. Are they planning to appoint a bringbaki, as my friend Mr. Ramsaran said, or a comebacky to this position? I am anxiously awaiting to see who will be the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, reversal of VAT on electricity and water, page 74 of 85. As I read that paragraph, I am still looking to see how exactly the pensioners, who are the guardians, some of them, most of them, and keepers of our rainforest, the beauty of Guyana, how are they standing to benefit from reversal of VAT on electricity and water? I am speaking about pensioners in Chinoying, Mr. Speaker, pensioners in Kaikan, pensioners in Philippi, in Sibay, in Conashen, in Itabak, in Kurukubaru, just to name a few of our indigenous communities. How exactly will they benefit from this reversal of VAT? For Mr. Speaker, they have never benefited from the previous VAT exemption, and they will never benefit from this present VAT exemption on electricity and water. You may ask the question why? Because many of our pensioners in the indigenous communities still rely on the water from the rivers, creeks, and springs to do their cooking, washing, and bathing. Mr. Speaker, it therefore means that this measure has no absolute meaning to my grandparents living in those communities. They will never benefit from this measure as long as electricity and metered water is not made accessible to them. So Mr. Speaker, the government has a task to correct their figures. Perhaps what I can suggest to this honorable house and to my friends over there is that they be given an allowance to their pension. That, Mr. Speaker, will put more money into their pockets. Mr. Speaker, another measure that I wish to elaborate on is the measure that is mentioned on page 75 of 85. Paragraph 6.6. And I quote, Mr. Speaker, it is crucial now more than ever for government to stimulate the economy. I am pleased to announce that our engagements with the local banking sector have been fruitful, and government will be granting corporate tax relief to the banks for low-income loans, which will allow low-income households to borrow up to an additional $2 million at a lower interest rate. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, what alternative measures are in place for indigenous brothers and sisters who are living in their communities to access loans when they have no collateral to get a bank loan? More so, you are referring to low-income households. What about no-income households? For many of the households in the hinterland have no source of income, and we all know that's a fact. Again, I wish to reiterate, take pattern from the APNU-AFC coalition, who in collaboration with the IDB delivered completed 3-bedroom houses to 25 households in Seaby, 21 households in the Upper Mazaruni, region number 7, and many more in other hinterland regions under the Sustainable Hinterland Housing Project. Mr. Speaker, when I was tasked with the oversight of this project in the Ministry of Communities then, I quickly asked, what was the criteria used for selection? And how come only regions 1 and 9 are benefiting? As though it was only meant for certain people living in certain areas. I was told, Mr. Speaker, it was too expensive to execute the projects in regions 7 and 8. However, Mr. Speaker, I am proud to say today that under the APNU-AFC, we made it happen. And I implore on the honorable ministers, Minister Kroll and Minister Rodriguez, to continue the project and expand it to the people of the Potaro-Seperuni region. They too deserve a home of their own. Prior to 2015, Mr. Speaker, there seemed to be no increase in the purchasing power of the populace, which is pivotal to the quality of good life for the individuals and families. Recognizing this, Mr. Speaker, the coalition government went ahead to increase the minimum wage from $39,570 to $64,200 for the first 3 years in governance. And presently, Mr. Speaker, it is at $70,000 Guyana dollars. For 23 years, the PPPC was dragging their feet on the nation's progress. And if one does a comparative analysis, one will clearly see that we had begun working assiduously towards reversing poverty to prosperity. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I crave your indulgence in allowing me to highlight some of the progress made as we strive to improve the welfare of our hinterland residents. How can you say too little or nothing was done to improve the lives of our indigenous brothers when the APNU-AFC coalition made humongous efforts in providing more than 20 communities with potable water in the Rupununi? And if you want to know where, Mr. Speaker, Ruperti, Shulinap, Aishalton, Yuramparu, Iowa, Tiger Pond, Silver City, Simony, Anaputa, just to name a few, and Chinawing in the Upper Mazaruni. These persons now have access to potable water. Some of them pipes heading into their homes. And many of our pensioners are happy, they're appreciative, they're grateful for they can now bathe at their homes. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I must remind my honorable members on that out. APNU AFC is an inclusive government. Whether you're affiliated to us or not, we will provide for you. And we have done that happily. Mr. Speaker, there was so much done for our hinterland brothers and sisters within a short period of time, for which they are very much grateful. Mr. Speaker, we in the APNU AFC government, through the Guyana Lands and Surveys, distributed land leases to residents of Kwakwani, Kildonia, Nurney in Region 6, 36 of them for the first time. Residents of Port Kaituma and Matthews Ridge were also recipients. Mr. Speaker, it was also under this administration that the first ever diploma in land administration was launched in partnership with the University of Guyana, with 20 persons from the Commission and others from GGMC and CHNPA were offered to do those courses. Mr. Speaker, it was also under this administration that a regional disaster risk management center was established in the town of Letem. In fact, it is now 95% completed. You just need electricity and water. Mr. Speaker, isn't that development? What will you call that, Mr. Speaker? We have improved the capacity of our people at the community and regional level so that they can better deal with whatever disaster comes in their community. Mr. Speaker, and if I am to continue, you would have heard from my colleague, Minister Kati, former Minister of Telecommunications, Mrs. Kati Hughes, that more than 70 ICT hubs were established in our indigenous communities. Several primary schools are now connected. But of course, there is always a challenge. And there is always room for improvement. But I want to assure the nation that we had started and we expect nothing less than PPPC government to continue and to complete and to ensure that all our schools in the indigenous communities are connected and receives equitable and equal education as anyone else around the country.
2-minute notice.
Mr. Speaker, in my conclusion, I wish to quote from the former competent finance minister, Mr. Winston Jordan. And I quote, budget measures are private sector oriented rather than for the people, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, I wish to offer suggestions and recommendations to this House, to this Honorable House, I'm asking the government, as I said before, they are in the driving seat. Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for. I am asking the government to be an inclusive government for the people of Guyana. Serve the people in humility. Serve the people with love. And serve your country, our beautiful country, Guyana, with dignity and integrity. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, can we take a 10-minute suspension at this time? And we'll be back in 10 minutes.